Hey, what's already? Welcome back to News Dose, and Xbox's next generation console is taking shape. I mean, there's no doubt about that because we've gotten a ton of information this past month about their next platform. The thing is, though, is that we now have the final piece that really seems to bring everything together. It explains why they're campaigning that everything is an Xbox. It explains why they've partnered up with Asus to make an Xbox ROG Ally. It also explains their multi-platform strategy. Their next Xbox is their end game. It will be the last Xbox, or at least technically, but it also won't be the last Xbox. That might be a little bit confusing at first, but it's going to make a little bit more sense here in just a little bit, so do make sure to stay tuned. First, though, I do want to thank my supporters on Patreon and on YouTube memberships. Thank you just so much for what you do, and you will receive this video through early access. Let's go get right into things, though, starting off with Battlefield Redsec. This is the new free-to-play Battlefield 6 Battle Royale mode, and it launched yesterday. Now, honestly, I don't really care for Battle Royale style of games. They're just not my thing. They never have been, and they probably never will be. But if you are interested in these type of games, then go check it out, because, I mean, you can't beat free. Free is good. But I have at the very least been curious about its reception. I explained this in a previous video, but basically I want Battlefield 6 to be very successful this year, because I think its success will ultimately be a good thing for gamers. It'll bring more competition to the Call of Duty series, which I think it seriously needs it, because that franchise has become stagnant, thanks to Activision's overconfidence in its brand power. Now, thankfully, the base Battlefield 6 game has performed very well, which has been great to see. But I don't know if we can necessarily say the same thing about Battlefield Redsec. Now, we still need more data in terms of its player numbers, but currently, it has a 38% approval rate on Steam. Now, to be fair, it does seem like some of the criticism simply comes from people who enjoy the base game, but are apparently being forced to play Redsec to complete certain challenges. So, these reviews might not necessarily be indicative of the actual quality, and that's where I want to ask you all. If you've played Redsec, how do you like it? Did it meet your expectations or not? Let me hear in the comments below. Now, we also got some reviews for Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD 2D Remake. With last year's release, this will complete the Erdrick trilogy, which I think is really cool. These are some of the most influential JRPGs of all time, especially over in Japan. Japan loves this series. And to see them come back in this way, it is quite literally beautiful to see. I really love the trend for these HD 2D remakes, though. I mean, for me personally, I'm still waiting for Final Fantasy VI and maybe Chrono Trigger. Come on, Square Enix, step your game up here. But in the meantime, even after all of these years, the original Dragon Quest games still hold up. Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD currently has an 85 overall score on Metacritic, which puts it right in line with last year's release, which ended with an 84 overall score. So, pretty consistent, really, but do keep in mind that there is actually new content in these games as well. They expanded on certain characters, and they even extended the first game by several hours. So, I mean, if you're a fan of the original games, or if you just liked last year's release, definitely consider Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD 2D Remake. Oh, and we also got another update from Remedy Entertainment. Of course, they released FBC Firebreak earlier this year, and similar to most live service games from studios that historically are known for their single player, it expectedly flopped. I mean, admittedly, I was optimistic that Firebreak might be different, but no, it flopped as well, and, well, they just confirmed that. In a recent financial report, they revealed an operating loss of 16.4 million euros between July and September. They went on to say that they weren't satisfied in part because of FBC Firebreak, but the new CEO did point out, quote unquote, that the majority of our effort goes into working with our established franchises, Control and Alan Wake, which we continue to invest in and expand into other media as a part of our long-term strategy. In addition, we're focused on the Max Payne 1 and 2 remake with Rockstar Games. And this here is the exact reason that I was never upset about FBC Firebreak. To me, they took a chance. No, it probably wasn't a very good chance to take because, we've seen this story play out time and time again. But at the same time, they didn't put all of their eggs into one basket. That's my main problem with somebody like Sony. I think that they've handled their live service initiative just terribly. In my opinion, some live service games in the pipeline is probably a smart move for them, but they should never have put the majority of their budget into live service. I've been saying that for years and years and years on this channel, and unfortunately, that's what they did. And that's why their pipeline currently has been terrible these past few years, and it doesn't seem to be much better going forward. The reality is that most live service games fell, and especially from studios that typically work on single-player story-driven games. So studios like Bluepoint, as one such example, should never have put all their eggs into the now canceled God of War multiplayer game. But because they did, we might not see a game from them until close to 2030, which means it will have been close to 10 years since their last game being Demon's Souls, which is absolutely crazy to think about. For a studio to only release one game in a 10-year period, I mean, what are we doing anymore? What happened to the days where we would get an entire trilogy in a single generation? At the very least, though, Remedy didn't do that, and apparently it seems like they are going to push for other forms of media, so we could see Alan Wake, maybe possibly become a live-action show or something like that, but hey, we are going to see more from their single-player franchises and probably relatively soon. All right, now let's just go and get into Xbox's next-generation strategy because I really believe we kind of know what they're going to do. I mean, there's just so much smoke by this point that there just has to be a fire. Now, there's always a chance that they could change their strategy. I mean, we can't rule that out. But as of this recording, I'm fully expecting their next console to be a PC console hybrid that can utilize Windows in some shape or form. In other words, it's going to feel like an Xbox console, it's going to boot directly into an Xbox UI, and it's going to be backwards compatible with seemingly your entire Xbox library. But if you want, you can also take advantage of what Windows has available, which for gamers, that means storefronts like Steam, GOG, and the Epic Game Store. It'll also be able to do emulation, and I mean, that pretty much opens up everything. So if you think about it, the next Xbox technically, in some ways, will be the most compatible console of all time. It not only can play your Xbox library seamlessly, which, I mean, PC can't even currently do, but it can also pretty much play everything else. So there is upside to this idea. Now, of course, it's not going to have exclusives. They are now a multi-platform publisher, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be extremely expensive. I mean, by this point, I'm expecting no less than $1,000, and it very well could go beyond that based on how they're already advertising it. So even though I think this is a really interesting idea on paper, it's still likely going to be a niche device. However, I don't really think that they're building this console with the idea that it's going to be the most popular platform on the market. I don't think that that's what they're trying to do. One thing that we have heard a few times, though, leads me to believe that this console is their end game. In fact, Austin Evans just dropped a video where he said from his understanding, the new Xbox won't be a console or a PC, but instead it will be a standard that OEMs can license and manufacture their own Xbox. Now, this is not the first time that we've heard something like this, but it is very interesting because what that means is that Xbox is building their own next-generation device, which we're going to call the first-party flagship that leads by example in this case. But the real important part about their next-generation plan is the operating system itself. That right now is what they're trying to perfect. That's why they went out and collaborated with ASUS on the Xbox ROG Ally. And that not only teases the future of their operating system, but also third-party hardware collaborations. So basically, they're trying to perfect this idea of Xbox and Windows combined into this console-like experience. And if they can nail that idea, well, then they can go out and partner up with other third-party manufacturers to make their own version of Xbox, which in some ways has a leg up compared to traditional gaming PCs. Now, I'm not saying that it's better than a gaming PC, it kind of depends on what you want, but it will be a gamer-centric PC-like device without the Windows bloat, but it's also going to have the Xbox library fully ready for you to play, hopefully all the way back to the OG Xbox. So this all means that their next Xbox could technically be Microsoft's last console, but it also won't be the last Xbox because they're going to have OEM Xboxes as well. In other words, we could have an ROG Xbox console here in a few years. We could have a Lenovo Xbox console, a Dell Xbox console, and the list goes on and on and on. If you think about it, their marketing campaign, "This is an Xbox," kind of leans into this entire idea. Their end game really has become everything is an Xbox, and they might take that to the next level by collaborating with third-party companies on these OEM Xbox consoles. Now, will they succeed in that endeavor? I think a lot of that depends on can they perfect this operating system that they're working on, because I think on paper there are reasons to like what they're planning, but it really all comes down to the execution at the end of the day. What I will say, though, is I think they're giving their fan base, the people that are already in the Xbox ecosystem, a legitimate reason to be interested in their next console, or maybe an OEM console. Not only will your library carry over, or at least digitally, I do have questions about if it has a disk drive or not, but the other thing is that it seems like they are designing it to be the most powerful console on the market, and possibly by far. So it's going to be expensive. I think that people need to brace themselves for that. But for people who want a super premium console that's also super compatible, it seems like that's who they're catering to. And then these third-party companies could also cater to different audiences, depending on what they want to do with their own version of Xbox. So I think it's a very unique idea coming from a console manufacturer. I think the closest idea to this is probably Steam machines, but I do think that it makes sense for Microsoft and the Xbox brand and just kind of the way they're going. I mean, there's always been questions about if Microsoft will continue making Xbox hardware, and this dates all the way back to the Xbox One days. And to a degree, this kind of ends that discussion because theoretically, this idea could spawn new Xbox consoles for years and years to come. Let me know what you think about all this, though. Do you like the idea of OEM Xbox consoles or not? Anyways, though, that's going to be it for this episode. But until next time, make sure to subscribe, ring that bell, and peace out.